whether accountants still do have a role to play, yeah. But of course, first there are a lot of new jargons, new terms, and which are all new to us actually, yeah. When we studied accountancy, because I am I'm a lecturer in accounting, yeah. When we teach the students, when we design the syllabus, there's no such thing as IR 4.0, okay? We never heard about, well, artificial intelligence, yes, we have quite common. Machine learning. Machine learning, we thought it's people who are learning, right? Yeah, but what is machine learning? Okay, okay. And then another term, which is called disruptive technologies. I'm sure Prof. Andrati will talk better on that one, because I just looking at the abstract of the keynote speakers. I'm sure the others will be speaking a lot about it, and they are good at it, yeah. And what we are talking about is actually the new technologies, yeah? The new technologies. So are we ready for the new technology? If we are referring to accountants, will accountants still be relevant in this new digital era, right? So we'll see, because there's a lot of things that need to be done. We are talking specifically about accounting profession, yeah? As I just spoke to Mr. Manish here, he said a lot of students are afraid to do, or they don't want to do professional degrees, you know, or professional certification of accountants. They don't want, yeah? Why? So maybe they have to think again in this new digital era, yeah? And disruptive technologies, I'm not really going to dwell into it, yeah, because later we'll hear more from Professor Hendaki. And then what we are talking about disruptive technologies, basically something new that can disrupt what you already have, right? Sometimes we are so complacent, happy with whatever that we have today. But can we foresee what's coming, right? Sometimes we don't like the new things that's coming, but you cannot run away from it, yeah? You cannot run away from it. So you have to be able to embrace these new changes, yeah? Okay? And we are talking about Industry 4.0, you can also refer to as digital era, yeah? And why Industry Revolution 4.0? Sometimes we call Industry Revolution, in Malaysia we call it Industry 4.0. They mean the same thing, yeah? Because the industry have evolved 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, now is the 4.0 generation, yeah? Okay, things change a lot from the old days, yeah? Imagine people produce products, very much rely on labor, and you know, in our countries, labor cost is so cheap. That's why a lot of people come to our countries, yeah? But things have moved, things have changed so much up to today, okay? And also the use of data, yeah? So the use of data, there's a lot of data, we call it the big data. So what is the meaning of big data? So you don't never heard of this term big data before, okay? So now we hear big data. What is big data all about, yeah? Okay? And then it is supposed to, oh sorry, it is supposed to deliver efficiency, reduce risk, and create better products. Of course, new changes are supposed to improve things, the way things are done before, isn't it? Yeah? And bear in mind that the new technologies affect our daily life. you cannot say you don't know technology. You cannot say, yeah, because as I see, very obvious thing that I see whenever I come to Indonesia is Gojek. Yeah, now the owner of Gojek becomes your minister of education. Imagine that, isn't it? Yeah. So imagine that he is from the industry and he becomes the education minister in this industry revolution 4.0, right? So imagine the quantum leap that he will bring to you all. Yeah? I am anxious to wait. A lot of my friends say, wow, yeah, when he's appointed, he's not only very technology savvy, but he is also young and handsome, right? Okay, so we are really excited. Not only you all, we are in Malaysia also excited to see a young minister of education, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, we are still talking about the new focus on optimizing use of data and information. Of course, data means nothing if you don't convert them to something that you can use. So the power of the data, and of course, we also talk about a lot of other technology, not just smart technology. Okay. What I can share with you is that what I could gather from Malaysia, where in Malaysia we now have a document called Industry Forward, National Policy on Industry 4.0, and this is very interesting actually. This is about the overview of the industrial revolution. Here in this document, it is referred to Industry 4.0. Yeah, basically to look at how these technologies impact the manufacturing industry. When you talk about industry, you only imagine industry, isn't it? There are so many kinds of industry, but very prominently is manufacturing industry. Even in service industry, you are manufacturing service, isn't it? So that's how I see it. Yeah. So this is a very big document. Yeah. How these technologies bring new dimension to the industrial development. Okay. And the idea is that it should result in dramatic increase in industry productivity. Okay. And of course, it is also to give greater efficiency, yeah, changing the traditional manufacturing system, yeah, and the relationship with the suppliers, producers, customers, okay, as well as the relationship between human and machines, yeah, okay. Don't think about machine, even though we say machine learning. Yeah? Have I said about machine learning? What is machine learning? Yeah? Machine learning means the machine are very smart. Yeah? The machine are very smart. Of course, it's the human that create the machines, right? Yeah? But with some input to the machines can be very smart. The machines start collecting the data and producing information, okay, right? Without us realizing it, yeah, without us realizing it, okay, and it is become very useful, okay. Don't just imagine about robotic technology. Of course, robotic technology is one example. Yeah, how robots are very smart and very intelligent, isn't it? Yeah. So the machine sometimes, whatever data they have or whatever input they have, they create new data. Okay, they create new data, and a lot of automation can be done out of that. Okay, this is the basically the Industry 4.0 framework. Yeah, where the technologies advancement and convergence. So we are talking about what is Industry 4.0 all about. It is about the advanced technology and how they converge, yeah, and they are enabling technologies, yeah, and the digitalization of the production-based industries are driven by these technological drivers. So later maybe we could see a little bit more. Yeah. And there are, if you can see here, there are many. Oh. You look at here, what are involved here? Big data analytics, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, cyber security, additive manufacturing, yeah, system integration, simulation, advanced material, autonomous robots, yeah. Now, autonomous cars, right? Car can move without any driver, isn't it? Yeah, that's machine learning, yeah. Okay, and then Internet of Things and cloud computing. Are you all familiar with these technologies? Yeah, okay. And then it is how the Industry 4.0 is defined is actually a set of evolving and converging technologies. Okay, and they are pushing the boundaries of what can be manufactured through additive manufacturing and advanced material. So later we'll see all these things briefly. Yeah, and these technologies are enabling richer insights through big data analytics. They make it. We find very little boundary between what is physical and what is digital reality, right? Okay. And they are enhancing human capacity through artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, that means they are. Our brain has limited capacity, so with artificial intelligence, it helps to enhance the intelligence of humans. Yeah, okay, and a shift in the way information technology is being used through cloud computing. So, not enough on land, we are going outer space, cloud computing. Yeah, okay, but we don't know where is it, right? You don't know where is it. Is it in Indonesia, in Jakarta? Or is it in Kuala Lumpur? We don't know where is it. Yeah, and the system integration and Internet of everything. Internet of things, Internet of everything. Everything you can find from the internet, right? Even you can search for your missing family. Okay, right? So, but you don't have the real thing in the internet. If you search for your family, the extent is that you get connected to them, but you still cannot see them physically, but you still see them in the video, right? Nowadays, you are so, what do you call it, relying on your handphone. Whenever you go, you leave your children, but you will WhatsApp call them, they can see you, you can see them, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Before, if you have a maid, you just leave, what do you call it, like the walkie-talkie in the children's room, and you can hear them. But now it's so advanced, you can see them, what's going on, isn't it? Yeah, you can always talk to them wherever they are. But of course, cyber security. So don't forget, this is a very important role, this is a very important function, yeah, ensuring information system and the manufacturing lines are protected from cybercrime threats. There are a lot of bad people around also, yeah, and there are also not just benefits, but there are also some bad things can happen if we are so high tech, yeah, unless you really take care of the security part. So this is what those technologies are all about, yeah. Additive manufacturing. So what is it about? Using new materials, opening completely new possibilities, right? So if you talk about industry, there are a lot of industry. Yeah. Here, for example, 3D printing of organic tissues. There are a lot of other examples you can think of. Artificial intelligence. This is what we say, machine learning. Yeah. Okay. Focus on development of program that can teach themselves to learn. So the machine learning themselves, they understand, they can reason up, they can plan, and they can act, yeah, to new data in the right quantities, right? So, and then you have big data analytics. Increasing big data techniques are being applied in manufacturing industry. So please bear in mind, yeah, where do the accountants fit in all this? Yeah? Okay. And then advanced material, all right? For example, new materials and nanostructures, or everything now talk about nano. Even the facial cream, eh? So nowadays, if you market your product, you say nanotechnology. You apply straight away, go into your skin and quickly turn your skin smoothly, yeah? And then cyber security, okay? And simulation, of course, we are very familiar with the term simulation, yeah? For example, the pilot simulator, isn't it? Will make this simulation very easy, yeah? Especially when you are designing new products, okay? And like cloud computing, yeah? The past industrial revolution required significant capital as a ticket for entry, but with cloud computing, things are made easier, yeah, and cheaper, right? Where you can share the data, all right? And then we talk about Internet of Things. So I'm sure you know, yeah, everything at the fingertips, yeah, okay? And as I said before, like Gojek, yeah, you just call anyone, come and pick you within minutes, yeah, okay? But in Malaysia, we still do not have Gojek, yeah? Because we don't, maybe we need to change the culture, okay? The culture of what? This one is from my personal feeling, okay? Because we are not used to ride with strangers. Yeah, okay? But you can say the same for Grab or Uber, isn't it? Yeah? But perhaps it's easier to elope or run away or kidnap someone with a motorbike, isn't it? Yeah? Okay? I'm just saying it from my heart, okay? Right? Because I personally also seldom or rarely take Uber or Grab. And when you talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0, trust is also another factor. Yeah? How can you make people trust you? People trust the system or the technology. Okay? And then, of course, you have the system integration. Yeah? Right? And when you talk about value change, industry value change, and this the vertical integration, yeah? So eventually achieving end-to-end digital integration across the entire value chain. Yeah? Okay? And then in Malaysia, here again, I'm referring, what is the focus sectors of Industry 4.0? When they were talking about 4.0, the main focus are in this industry. But where do you, as I said earlier, where do you imagine the accountants will be in any of this industry? So, can you imagine the role of professional accountant in these industries? Right? Electrical and electronic, machinery, equipment, chemical, medical devices, aerospace, and other sectors. Right? If you talk about professional accountants, the public accountants, a lot of them are giving services even in the public sector. How do public sector support this industry 4.0? Where do you see yourself as public accountant in the government agency, for example? Yeah? Where? And then, of course, there are a lot of issues and challenges, okay? And I'm just going to go through this where they have identified, very important, was already mentioned earlier, lack of awareness of the impact of and the need for the industry 4.0 technologies, both in terms of opportunities and business model disruption, especially among small, medium enterprises. Lack of awareness, lack of awareness. You cannot say that you are not aware anymore, okay? So, but still, because we are talking about high technology, how many of us can really keep pace with the high technology unless you are in the industry, okay? And the evolving customer expectation and demand for customization of products and faster delivery. For example, Food Panda, Grab Food, you just call. Nowadays, very easy, isn't it? Now, if I say in Malaysia we don't have Gojek, but I see a lot of the Food Panda and the Grab Food on the bike. That is increasing in number. Before, we never seen that. And of course, if you are selling nasi lemak, if you think you are just doing business from home, you can ignore this? Cannot, isn't it? You must be able to embrace this technology. You must be able to register yourself into the system. Then you can market your product better, isn't it? Okay. And then ownership of intellectual properties due to interconnectivity and information sharing along the supply chain. Of course, in this technology, a lot of innovations come out. A lot of innovations come out. And people can get access to information easily. So they can copy your innovation, your product. So you need to also think about the intellectual property, the ownership of your creation or your innovation. And then low digital adoption, especially among SMEs. As I said to you, sometimes when you adopt new technology, it's very costly, isn't it? Even if you don't know, you need to employ consultants, still you have to pay them, right? And then lack of integrated and digital approach to data gathering. Sometimes you have a lot of data, but you don't know how to make use of the data. Okay? And then exposure to cyber threats. I mentioned this before. Do we have the infrastructure to take care of the cyber security? And then significant shortage of required talent, skill and knowledge for industry. Are you knowledgeable? Do you have the skills? Of course, these are new to our country, isn't it? This is new, so we have to understand the fact that this is a challenge to us. Okay, and then limited understanding of manufacturing firm of required future skill and expertise. So nowadays, a lot of people are sharing new technologies. For example, the autonomous car. And then you can't believe, even the big companies like automobile companies like Rolls-Royce. There was one day someone was sharing me the latest model of Rolls-Royce. So intelligent. They open the door for you. They move the car for you. You just have to relax and drink. Okay. And then inadequate understanding of cost and benefit. So they don't know what's the benefit. So they think may not be worth incurring the cost. And then few visible success stories of applying the technologies. So we need to know what can be done, what benefit you will bring, and of course lack of centralized and easily accessible information platform to understand the best practice. Okay. Right. So I'll just skip this one. Okay. And also this. So let's see some of the example. Right. Still, Asia, our countries are having the future in all this technology. Right. So what is it for professional accountant? Okay. So business transform, and people and technologies are also transforming the way we live our life. from home to outside world with virtual reality experience. Now a lot of things virtual, or sometimes they are not that real. Okay, but still people adore it. Imagine your girlfriend is a robot. Yeah. Okay. Advanced technologies are revolutionizing industries and also public sector. So therefore, you need to constantly innovate. And what is the role of accountants in this IR 4.0? You have to play more strategic role in terms of innovative application. Yeah? How the technologies can improve. If you are using information to make decision, you have to have a better data and improve information provided to the decision makers. Okay, and in analysis of information, yeah, and look for new services, right? And then you must evolve and reinvent yourself to become user of technology and digitalization. All right, and to improve your relevance as accountant. Just one more slide. Okay, so whatever it is, accountant, whether you are in the private sector or in the public sector, yeah, you need to prepare yourself to embrace the future that evolves around Industry 4.0. All right, I think I can stop there, right? And I hope I have shared something of value to you all today. Okay? All right? Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you for Professor Ruhayatan for the great presenter. And now we come to the second keynote speakers, Professor Rahat Munir, MCom PhD, FCPA, CA, and CMA. He is the head of the Department of Accounting and Corporate Governance and Professor of Accounting, Macquarie University. His research expertise includes management accounting systems, performance measurement system, CSR, and sustainability, corporate governance, management control system, political connection, whistleblowing, and banking system. Now, please welcome Professor Rahat Munir. Please, the time is yours.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. All right, so I'm just trying to adjust. This is not for me. All right. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming here and attending a wonderful conference on public sector. Public sector is a topic which everyone talks nowadays, whether you are in a developing country or you are in a developed world, whether you are in Australia, New Zealand, US, or in Canada. And my own research, and what I'm going to talk is, next 15 to 20 minutes, is outcome of 3 papers we recently wrote. One was on public sector itself, direct efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Second was on political connections and public sector efficiency. Is it okay? We can pull this a little bit up. Everybody can hear me in the back? Super. All right. And the second paper, third paper was on whistleblowing. And then there's a talk on whistleblowing and the national culture. And Indonesia is no different from many emerging markets or developing countries. All right. So the research was not in Indonesia, but another similar type of country with similar culture and with a similar religion as well. So there's a lot of talk around the elements of public sector and what exactly has made public sector so attractive nowadays as a research field for many researchers in accounting, those who are undertaking research. So there are 7 points which I'm going to tackle, and then in those 7 points I try to highlight key issues the public sector is facing, all right? But the emphasis would basically be around governance, transparency, and whistleblowing as well. So I'll talk about efficiencies and so on. So we talk about private sector efficiencies, organizational efficiencies, but we never talk about public sector. And public sectors are the main engine of any country's economy and developments and so on. So we always ignore public sector and its effectiveness and efficiency as an institution as a whole. Primarily, the objective of any public sector institution or public sector as a whole, whether it is a government or semi-government, but there is a public sector involvement, there are 5 key objectives. One of the main key objective is that every country wants to have strong and sustainable public sector, so that all normal activities of developments are supported. For example, this institution is providing a lot of services in terms of human resource development in accounting and finance. And similarly, there are a lot of other public sector institutions providing similar types of facilities. And then second objective is adopting all international practices. If you are a professional accountant in a public domain, then perhaps international practices like international accounting standards, international financial reporting standards. And now it is more of adoption of international standards and best practices for the public sector. So there might be some local standards, rules, regulations, but at the same time there are international practices which are to be followed. Then public value management, like how you add value to whatever you do, how you add value to whatever services you provide, whatever goods you produce, all right, and the products you deliver, and that product basically is a service. So if there is a lot of corruption in this sector, then perhaps you are not providing value to the sector, rather you're devaluing the sector, and then we have seen in a lot of countries public sector has become rather corrupt, and because of that the reason was either they were not sustainable public sector or regulations or standards were not followed on those sectors. Regional cooperations like Indonesia with Australia, we are not only neighbors, we are very neighbor. I quite often travel to Indonesia. Flight is, the moment you leave from Sydney, after 1.5 to 2 hours, basically you are in Jakarta, all right? And if you're going Bali, then perhaps it's less than that as well. So it is very, very sort of neighboring. And then as a neighboring regional country, then other neighbors around in the same Pacific Rim, perhaps it's very important and critical that you connect in a public sector with those institutions. And the last one is a thought leadership. Public sector provides a roadmap to private sector and all those institutions which undertake commercial activities, all right? So if public sector doesn't have the right framework and right direction, then there will be a missing element of thought leadership within the entire sector, okay, when I say the entire sector, which include private sector as well as public sector. Now, all these 5 objectives cannot be achieved unless there is efficient public sector, or there is a transparency in the public sector, and then finally there is accountability in the public sector. So these 3 elements, and all my talk today for the rest of the 10 minutes or 15 minutes is about these 3 elements. And remember, most of the research nowadays is being undertaken about these 3 elements of the public sector. So 3 questions are very critical to answer when you talk about public sector. Number 1 is, why is public sector accountable to the public? I mean, why there is so much scrutiny and accountability? Are there any reasons, specific reasons, which make them different from private sector? Number 2 is how to achieve public accountability. I think that is another important element, that when we talk about private sector, commercial organization accountability, there is a governance system and framework within those institutions, but public sector are slightly different, because you always look at the government top, that what frameworks they have, and why there is increasing concern on public sector efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Answer is very simple, because you, as a public sector institutions, or any public sector institutions, basically is custodian of budgets and budgetings within any country. And from budgets, what happened is it's managed through accounting practices, and then finally audit is done, and then you go back to budget. So it is a cyclical process. So it starts with the budget. It's second is you account for resources, and then you audit those resources and then go back. So that is a continuous process which is followed in any institutions. In commercial, perhaps it is slightly different. Maybe budget comes later, but in public sector, resources and providing resources to those activities perhaps is very, very crucial. So what is accountability? There are different definitions. I can't give you one definition. Economists define accountability in a different way than politicians, and then accountants define accountability in a different fashion, more in terms of numbers, more in terms of achievements and responses. All right. So if you look at the literature on accountability, perhaps one of the oldest definition in accounting, Robertson Skeppen's paper, which was published in 1985, simply says giving and demand for reasons for a conduct. So whatever you do, then you provide reasons why you want to undertake that activity. That is primarily is your accountability. But if you dig down further, that a conduct important, or do that conduct in a right fashion, in a right way? And then we look at Gray et al.'s 1996 paper, which says duty to provide an account for reckoning those actions for which one is held responsible. So that is specific to the person, specific to the department, or specific to that undertaking or activity. So it is not as a whole, as a sector, but then it is very much specific to whatever actions and activities are undertaken. If we further go down in 2000's paper, is more on government level accountability, and this is basically is reporting official reports to citizens, and then actions back from citizens on government's actions and plans. So it is two-way. Basically, it is from the public sector to the community, and from community back to the government. All right. So that's two-way process basically establishes accountability in any public sector institution. So public sector are always scrutinized, and it must be happening nowadays. Just prior to the elections, all right, and everybody was talking about what new things they have introduced and all that sort of big claims and slogans. That is what I'm talking about, accountability, all right? So it is not accountability of politicians, the way they define accountability, but at the same time, accountability in terms of people, those who are part of the government. We call them government employees, work for the public sector. So in a public sector, accountability involves efficiency and transparencies in openly seeking information from those affected and honestly disclosing that information. All right. So when we undertook first research in a local governments in Australia, we found out that, like even a country like Australia, there's a lot of information which is not disclosed. The paper is published in one of the top journals in the world, but actually that was one of the findings. And then local governments, they contacted me that to share further experience on what was happening in the local governments in entire New South Wales, and then that's what the findings were. Basically, there's a lot of information which is not disclosed in terms of their efficiency and in terms of providing a transparent information. That's why I picked two things. One is efficiency, and another one is the transparencies. Now, in a commercial organization, when you are in a private company, there's always a pressure from shareholders, and you're bound to provide that information to shareholders in annual general meetings. Unfortunately, that is missing with the public sector. Therefore, there is more and more emphasis now on the public sector on efficiency and transparencies. It is indispensable for creating and sustaining public sector trust, as well as expressing justice. So you have to do in that way. It comes actually more in when there are more of development activities. So you might have seen a lot of politicians and those who manages eventually public sector organizations, they try to drift resources to the sectors and to the areas where they belong, right? So that is what it says, that when there is accountability and transparencies, perhaps that would not happen in those institutions. And third one is, it requires openness, deliberations, impose and obligations and decision makers to provide honest information, justifications for the decisions you undertake. And that's what we just heard about: information, big data, data analytics. All these things are coming up now, not only in commercials, but also in the public sector organizations. So this is, I love this actually framework as a public sector institutions, that how the governance work. Now, I'm not going to go into detail because there's a whole day lecture actually on this framework only. But I'll just talk about what you see, the key point. The key point is that always public sector institutions look for outcome, and that outcome builds with the confidence you have in the governance system in that institutions, within that public sector. And then at the bottom, you would see that there are three different expectations. One is risk management. Number two is relationship, internal and external, with the community, civic life, and internal people, those who work for their organizations. And last is more on leadership, ethics, and culture you built around public sector. So these are called as three main foundations. Three main foundations of the public sector, and then there are three pillars you built for the public sector institutions. Now, expanding that further, basically the accountability and transparency and efficiency is the outcome of public demand and developing partners. I've been shown that I got 2 minutes left, so I'm a little bit in a hurry, all right? But developing partners' demands and other stakeholders, all right? And then they build into efficiency and effectiveness. Now, one reason why there is a need for transparency in public sector is the corruption index. I'm not intentionally, I have not put Indonesia there, but you can see where the Indonesia is, all right? So if you go for the corruption index, you'll feel that public sector institution in the developing countries, the corruption index is on very, very high, especially for the public sector institutions. And the yellow is more in terms of developing countries, right? So why it's not achieved? Accountability, transparencies. Basically, the reason for that is there are no directives, no standards followed. Just give me one more minute, I'm finishing, all right? Inadequate number of qualified accountants. I'm always pleased to come and stand like you have thousands of accountants produced. Unfortunately, that model is not applicable in a lot of other countries, all right? Failure to have internal controls. Resistance to change, especially, is a big issue in the public sector. Failure to recognize relationship between processes and records, and lack of top management support. Maybe I'll cover that one with this. So how to achieve that? So number one is you have to have effective internal control system within your organization, and then establish an effective system for execution and implementation of that system, and then utilization of money according to that governance system within public sector. So one of the recommendations, slide which I'm showing you, is number one, try to implement international public sector accounting standards. If you have not already done that, then make public sector managers accountable in terms of their ethical conducts, and then have specific code of ethics. Unfortunately, when we took a second paper on political connections, we found out most of the public sector institutions does not have code of ethics written. You ask them, you say, yep, we do have code of ethics. When you say, okay, show me your code of ethics, they are not in a written forms. And then consistent and regular regulations and investigation and prosecution for the crimes, all right? So take disciplinary actions wherever they are needed. Have a good benefit systems in the public sector, because that has always been an issue, all right? So I was in a debate yesterday in Jakarta. The same issue came up. Public sector doesn't have a reward system, so that is needed. Good internal control committees, corporations, and so on. One last thing before I go back and give a chance to my next speaker is whistleblowing is very important. Often we do say that we do have a system of whistleblowing. The only thing which can really, help in improving transparency in the public sector is if you have a system of protection of people, those who voice against any wrongdoing in the public sector, all right? That could be anyone working within the public sector, all right? So with this, my friends, thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any question later. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for Professor Rahat Munir for the great presentations. And now we come to the third keynote speakers, Associate Professor Hadrian Jayadekerta. Associate Professor Hadrian Jayadekerta is the Associate Dean Research and Associate Professor in Strategic Management Accounting in the School of Business and Law at Edith Cowan University, Perth, Australia. Associate Professor Hadrian Jayadekerta has a PhD in Strategic Management Accounting and an MBA, a Master in Industrial Engineering, and a Bachelor degree in Accounting. Now, please welcome Associate Professor Hadrian Jayadekerta. The time is yours.
Okay. Ada mic yang bisa saya pakai. Selamat siang semuanya. It's really hard always to basically speak the last, right? Everybody already talk about a lot of things, and now my turn to basically say something different, right? So it's always hard. Then everybody already got tired, right? So sleepy. So I don't actually want to stand there. I will basically walk around, right? If you actually don't mind about it. Okay, so the glitch come back. So this is part of disruption, right? A test of agility, right? So I've been, as you know from the background, the way I speak, etc., my name as well, it's quite obvious I'm local product, right? I'm Indonesian, but I've become like TKI for more than 20 years, right? So now I come to Indonesia often, right? As actually probably another TKI, because now I live actually overseas for more than 20 years. So I've been TKI all over the place, basically. I've been, but in the last, thank you. So in the last 22 years, I've been an academic in Australia, New Zealand, right? And I work in various places as well. My last role, if you like, is associate in research, but my background is accounting, as mentioned before. So what I want to talk about today is about disruptive technology, the changing landscape in the public sector governance. Overly, this will overlap with the previous presentation by my good friend, Professor Ruhaya from Accounting Research Institute in Malaysia, and Professor Rahat is actually really the expert in the area as well, with rich, really practical experience as well. So I hope I will not overlapping too much, but obviously there will be overlaps in my presentation here and there. Okay. Should work. Okay. That's me. That's me last night, basically, right? So not only Yani, right, basically read that papers for 2 hours, I did the same thing, right? We actually had a chat until 1 a.m., right, or nearly 1 a.m. this morning, and then we went back to our hotel room, and that was me for a few hours, right? So what you will see are the slides that I will prepared at between 1 a.m. to 3:30 a.m., right? That's basically the story. Okay, we talked about technology and change disruption in general, right? Industry 4.0, but then we basically talked about disruptions a lot. Now, when people said, okay, this disruption is a new thing, the reality is not. Right? When we actually talked about technological innovation, right, it's actually discussed since a long time ago. One example is Drucker. Right? If you like, Drucker mentioned in 1985 that technological innovation is crucial for sustainable economic development. So the awareness of the importance of technological innovations has been actually mentioned since a long time ago. Right? Now, emerging technologies will inevitably transform the world in many ways. Some are desirable, others that are not. So any changes will actually create good things, but also challenges. So some people can actually see challenges as really actually disruptor, if you like, right? Or destructor, or if you like, enabler. So it depends on how you actually see the change. Some people really actually hate changes or afraid of changes, but the reality is there are always good things about change. And the one thing that you should remember, and if you don't actually adapt to the change, you will lose in the game. Right? That's the reality of it. The extent to which the benefits are maximized and the risk mitigated will depend on the quality of governance, the rules, norms, standards, incentive, institution, and other mechanisms that shape the development and deployment of each particular technology. So when things happen in terms of changes, there should be mechanisms to ensure that the changes are actually utilized well. And how we actually ensure that? By having this. Rules, norm, standards, incentives, etc., etc. That's the homework, if you like, of every stakeholders, every people, every institution that actually deals with disruption. Disruption is one that displaces an established market, industry, or technology and produces something new and more efficient and worthwhile. Professor Rohaya already mentioned some example, right, about disruption. When we deal about disruption, when we're facing disruption, what should we do? Should we be worried, unsettling, or we can actually see it as an opportunity? It's actually up to us, right? We can't just be worried all the time without doing nothing. But we can actually try to see whether there are opportunities that we can gain, right, when we actually facing disruption. 12 key, this is just to show you some important or some key, if you like, emerging technologies. 3D printing, advanced materials and nanomaterials, artificial intelligence, robotic, biotech, energy capture, storage and transmission, blockchain, distributed ledger. Some people mentioned about big data just previously. Geoengineering, right? Link sensor, neurotechnology, computing technology, space technologies, virtual and augmented realities. And there are a few more actually, right? What actually affected by these changes, disruption, right? Usually people focus on the changes in technology in relations to how we actually work in our daily life and how it actually affect our work life as well. Now, let's start with how that affects our work life, our life, our daily life, if you like, as human beings. So, if I go and show you this is a graph, right? This is adoption of new technologies that actually show how many years is taken for a technology to have 50 million users. And this one is radio. It took 38 years for the radio to be owned by 50 million people. 38 years. So when it started to develop, right? 38 years from that time that was developed, 50 million people own radios, right? Then TV, 13 years. Only 13 years, 50 million people own TVs. iPod, 4 years. 4 years, 50 million people, right, own iPod. Internet, 3 years. 3 years, 50 million people started to use internet. Facebook, 1 year. Twitter, 9 months. WhatsApp, probably 2 months. I don't know, right? So if there are some more information there, we can probably see the pace getting shorter and shorter. People actually got adjusted to this technological change very quickly as well, right? Okay, now, I got so many things there, but I just want to skip some of them. When we talk about automation in relations to technological change, this is the thing that actually worry people, isn't it? Automation. Oh, our job will be replaced by automation, by machine, by robots, whatever Professor Roy already mentioned, stuff like that. Okay. The reality is that digital disruption, the word digital now is quite trendy, right? People actually use the word digital a lot, right? There have been industries affected by digital disruption. And it's actually practically everywhere, right? Oil and gas, healthcare, logistics, construction, right? E-commerce, right? Transport, right? All of them have been affected by digital disruption. Ourselves, we start with we as human beings, right? So, we have seen some disruption which have displaced an existing market, industry or technology and produced something new and more efficient. They disappeared completely, replaced by something new, right? Better, more efficient, etc., right? I'm not sure whether it's actually, some of you probably don't even know what it is, right? Some of you probably haven't born yet, right? Haven't actually seen one of these, for example, right? So this one is pager. Remember pager? Some of you probably remember pagers. Disappear, gone, right? No one uses this anymore except for hobbies, right? People still actually like this if they are actually really like to do it. This one, gone, right? Floppy disk, right? This one is so cool at the time, right? This is the cassettes. You put it there, right? And then you put it here, and then you can walk around like as if you are cool. If you do it now, right? Yeah, well, just try it if you like, right? So it doesn't work anymore. It's replaced by new, more efficient, right, better products, etc., etc. Then we have seen some disruption which have significantly affected in the existing market, industrial technology, right? But actually they don't replace the existing technology, industry market, etc., etc. They don't replace them, but they become alternatives of the established product, industry, markets, and other things. For example, budget airlines. The traditional airlines, mainstream one, they still exist, right? But we can see AirAsia, Ryanair in Europe, in the US, etc., etc., Lion Air locally, for example, right? And then we see Uber to the taxi driver. Not only Uber, you see Grab, Gojek, right? Ola is another one. You see them as actually become an alternative to traditional taxis, for example. Airbnb to the hotel industry. You can see Airbnb, home away. So, but do hotels, for example, disappear? No. Hotels do still exist, but there are alternatives for people that actually want to get or look for accommodation. Okay. WeChat Pay, for example, Alipay, right, PayPal, etc., etc. They actually replace cash. Cash relatively obsolete in China, relatively. Some people still use them, but younger generation especially they don't carry cash anymore, right? They use what? Their mobile phone, right, to do transaction. You go to Korea, it's the same thing, right? Then you can purchase from various online, if you like, shops. In the old days, in Indonesia, for example, people actually can't actually think that they can actually just do clicking, and then someone actually deliver the products to your house. Right? Not only that you can't imagine it, you can't do it. Right? For example, you look at eBay, for example. Right? So in the past, say 10 years ago, we tried to order product from eBay or Amazon. They basically say, or most vendors basically say, we don't deliver to Indonesia. Why was that the case, do you think? Why? Because there was no trust at the time that Indonesian people actually got not that they think that you're a cheater, no, well they do, but they actually think that there are not enough understanding and infrastructure and support and tools that allows Indonesian people to actually do transaction similarly to other people elsewhere. But nowadays, it's the same thing. So when the system is established, eBay then trusts everyone, including people in Indonesia. They still actually say, if you actually go to eBay, for example, or Amazon, we don't still deliver to these countries. Indonesia nowadays is not included on the list anymore because the trust level is actually getting higher. What does it mean? People adjust. Industry adjusts, people adjust, right? Consumer adjusts, vendor adjusts, everyone adjusts. Trivago, for example, right? Traveloka, for example, now, I don't know, Pagi-Pagi or tickets or whatever, you can actually choose that as option for accommodation. Disruption are not going to go away. They actually will come faster and faster and faster. So what should organization do in the era of disruption? What do you think? So if you're an organization or even as a person, what would you do? You can actually do this. I don't know. What's disruption? Apa itu disruption? Disruption apa? What disruption? You can do that. You can actually deny it, right? If you like, right? Or you do this, right? You actually don't want to know, right? People say something, you don't want to know, right? So you can actually do that. But if you do that, obviously the risk is high in terms of how you cope or adapt with the changes. You have to act and respond before it's obvious that they have to do so. Otherwise, it could be too late. What do you mean by act, right? What actually the risks? These are the risks that people actually worry the most. It's probably also the topic of one of the issue that I actually discuss or focus on this conference. Will disruption destroy jobs? So if I ask you this question, what would be your answer? There are so many horror stories that you can read, right? In a lot of media, right? That disruption will destroy jobs. What do you think? Accountants, for example. Will accountants disappear? Gone, replaced by I don't know what, but will it gone basically because of disruption? What do you say? What did you say? Shift. Fantastic. You deserve a promotion. So call, give me the WhatsApp your boss, and I basically say, right? So this person deserve a promotion. So around 40% now, however, right? If you look at this data, right? Around 40% of current Australian jobs have a high probability of being automated, and this is actually worry in the past, worry manufacturing. Right, people worry about manufacturing industry. Oh, the process will be replaced by robotics, etc., etc. So our people's job will disappear. But nowadays, it's basically worry everyone, right? Accountants, lawyers, right? Whoever, right? Because automation turned out to be, nowadays, can actually tap into this kind of situation as well that actually in the past wasn't actually thought about. Okay, but let's see this one. He mentioned shift, which is a great word there, right? If we actually I look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics data. Hopefully you can see it from back there. If not, I'll just explain it. This one is the graph of bank tellers, number of bank tellers from 1994 to 2014. Yeah, 20 years period. It's actually went down. It means what? Automation will have some effect on bank teller, I believe, right? People don't go to banks anymore, right? Meet with bank tellers. They can go with ATM, like online transaction, etc., etc. So the needs for bank tellers obviously reduce, and it's actually shown based on the data. But at the same time, we can actually see the number of financial professionals actually went up. What does it mean? Well, it means that some people here that actually used to be bank teller, they retrained themselves. They actually realized, oh, I couldn't be bank tellers for so much or too long because the change actually have happened. What do? Right? Some of them will retrain themselves, re-educate themselves. Once they re-educate, then shift. They shift from the role of bank teller to become finance professional. This one is probably even easier. This one is the number of photographic developer and printer. So when in the old days when you go to Photoshop, right, or then you actually got someone that actually process, right, your photo, print them, right. It basically went down sharply, boom, because of the digital technology, obviously, right. But the number of photographer itself actually now going up or went up during that period, because it's much easier to become photographer now. Right, in the old days, you got film, 36, 24, whatever, right? And you have really actually better skill, because if you basically just do click, that's cost already. Click, cost, right? And you actually don't know what's actually the results of that until you actually print them, right? So you need skills to become photographer in the old days. Nowadays, everybody can become photographer. Right, it's much easier. Right? You click, oh, right, not clean enough, not sharp enough, not white enough. Oh, abs, oh. Handsome, right, pretty, you know, that kind of things. It's become easier, and that's the reality of it, of the change. Disruption will affect occupation, but as your friend just now mentioned, but not necessarily destroy the jobs. They will change them. They will shift them. Okay, public sectors now, right? Going down to public sectors. Does public sector face disruption? Obviously. Everyone faces disruption, right? Will disruptive technologies make the current public sector approaches obsolete? What you're doing now, will this obsolete because of these disruptive technologies? What is the answer? Yes, and it should be obsolete. Because if you don't think that they won't be obsolete, you're in the wrong game. What you're doing now will be obsolete. It has to be obsolete, right? Otherwise, you don't actually adapt with the change, right? So how ready then the public sectors to adapt with these changes? The first one is to change your mindset, right? If you actually don't accept that changes has happened, right? It's actually happening now, and you don't actually want to change your mindset, start from the beginning, you actually don't start well. Everything, right? One of the most difficult things in doing something is to start doing it. If you don't actually start doing it, you never know whether you will actually succeed it or not, right? If you don't want to start, don't think about the change. Don't think about actually gain something at the end, because you never start anyway. So regarding disruptive technologies, it's up to you as a public sector, if you like. Accountants or public sector officers, whether you actually see this disruptive technology as enabler or destructor. If you think pessimistically, you can always see, it will actually destroy my job, my life, etc., etc. But if you are actually thinking innovatively and creatively, you will actually try to see this as enabler, something that make you actually perform better. Public sector challenge at the moment. Everyone is actually not only public sector nowadays are basically asked to achieve more for less. You have to perform more effectively, right? But at the same time, more efficiently, right? Achieve more for less. So, in that sense, this disruptive technologies is actually a good thing, right? This is, I just copy one of the examples, right? But the opinion, if you like, of this director of the Irish Center for High-End Computing. He said that disruptive technology will shape future public services. It's about time. It's the right time actually to realize, hey, we got this technology that actually can change the way we actually work, right? And that will actually change also the public sector's operational process. Disruptive technologies in accounting domain, right? Professor Rahat, Professor Ruhai already mentions a few of them. Artificial intelligence, robotic. That will affect, obviously, accounting domain. Accounting domains mean accounting disciplines, accounting curriculum, accounting lecturers, accountants, public sector accountants, everything, every stakeholders that actually relate to accounting. Everything must change, right? So if you got curriculum, for example, right, in a university, right, then the curriculum actually doesn't include this. It means that you produce what? Produce outdated graduates, for example. Right? If accountants actually don't actually try to implement this, retrain themselves, right, in relations to this, they also become outdated, even obsolete at the end, right? Disappear, gone. So, will disruptive technologies destroy jobs? Yes, if you don't actually act about it. Your job will be gone, will be disappear if you don't actually do something about it. Cloud computing, right? Everybody knows you don't actually need your own, if you like, server now or hard drive, whatever. You can put it somewhere else. Because of that, right, there are mobile accounting also, right, happens. People are actually now more mobile. Digital currencies, have you heard about cryptocurrencies, right? So you have to learn about that as well because it will come. It has come, but it will come stronger, right? So blockchain as well, big data as well, right? I'm not sure whether how many of you actually know about big data, blockchains in principle, not in details, not in, in depth. Not sure how many that you actually know about it. You have to learn about it, okay? So the key thought, right, before I got another one or two slides to finish, to ensure prosperity in the global economy, nothing is more important than the development and application of knowledge and skill. I took the opinion of Martin Rees, an astrophysicist, the past president of the Royal Society. But his opinion is actually very, very basic. If you actually want to continue your prosperity, you want to continue to be sustainable, learn, educate yourself, right? So, for public sector accountants, probably, right, in this case, more focus on that, you have to retrain, and reposition, right? In terms of what? Okay, right? You have to change your mindset from bookkeeping to strategizing. You have to change your mindset from preparing, right, to delivering innovation and insight. Preparations can be done by automation, right? Bookkeeping can be done by automation. If you basically go around and around in the bookkeeping and preparing, right, you'll basically again become or will become obsolete, right? So that would be my last slides or second last slide, but keep calm. Keep calm, educate yourself. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for Associate Professor Hadrian. Now we come to the last keynote speakers, Mr. Manish Gidwani. He is a ACCA member since 2001. He is also the CEO and founder of London School of Accountancy and Finance and the only gold ELP in Indonesia. Please welcome Mr. Manish Gidwani. Time is yours.
Selamat siang. My name is Manish Gidwani. While he's local, I am also local, just with an imported face. So, yes. So I was born in India I was there only for a short time. And then I came back to Indonesia when I was very young. And saya besar di Indonesia. Saking besarnya, you can see how much I've grown. Yeah. So, yeah. So I love this country, and I think I'm more Indonesian than a lot of Indonesians, because when I used to study in Malaysia, Indonesians are the only one who will tolerate somebody speaking bad about Indonesia. Yeah, if you say something bad about India to Indians, they get very offended. Indonesians will join the game. Oh yeah, parah sekali, negara kita, very bad, this kind of. So my encouragement is you must love this country, so you will be able to be a blessing to this nation. Yeah. So I'm an ACCA member, and I studied in Malaysia in Sunway, and I chose professional qualification instead of going to the academic pathway, because I saw that in the future, because originally I was not inclined towards research, though I have a lot of respect for those researchers. Yeah, it's just that at that point I'm a very street person. I'm a practical person. But of course, things that we do at work, when I founded that institution, London School of Accountancy and Finance, I realized students they have a lot of desire to learn technical knowledge, but also they want easy stuff, shortcuts. It's so difficult to get them to do the prestigious professional qualification. They just want to have an easy way out of the system. And so there are so many students now, instead of getting them to become accountants, they are wanting to work in startups. They are wanting to get rich easily. Many of the students don't realize that these are easy companies that have high valuation, and they blow up very fast. These are all balloons. Yeah, so we have all heard about the failure of WeWork IPO, yeah, and what's happening with Bukalapak. Yeah, so I strongly believe fundamental of finance and finance literacy is still something Indonesia needs to work on. Yeah, and that's my desire to generate more accountants. Yeah, so many of my movements are towards the education and industry. I'm also a practitioner. I have an audit firm, so I meet all kind of clients, yeah, who ask me to do sometimes the right thing and sometimes not the right thing. Yeah, and I have to say that, Professor Rahat mentioned that accountants are enemies of public sectors, because that's where corruption is paid out. Yeah, and true enough, the classic joke on accountants, I think you all know, yeah, the classic joke on accountants on what is 1 + 1. There's asked to 3 guys, 1 scientist, 1 mathematician, and 1 accountant. Yeah, you all know that, or should I repeat? Yeah, the scientist was asked, a mathematician was asked what is 1 + 1. Mathematician says it's very clear, 1 + 1 is 2. Right? Scientist was asked what is 1 + 1. He said, based on law of gravity, it could be 1.6 or 2.4. Then the accountant was asked, what is 1 + 1? His response is, how much do you want? Yeah. Now this is what we face on the ground. They ask us to create numbers. Yeah, and while the company talks about great systems, great internal controls, risk management, but if you don't have strong people with strong ethics, yeah, you will collapse. You will become the enemy of the public sector, because you do not have strong ethics. Yeah. So there's a lot of difference becoming a professional accountant and just being an accounting graduate. So I'm very glad this is a world of integration. Academics like Macquarie University have adopted professional qualifications as part of their system, where they also have ACCA. And so professional qualifications like CPA, CA Indonesia, this is something which we should adopt as part of a system. Yeah. So I'm going to share to you about the role of accountants. I'll make it, I think some of it has been shared, so I'll focus on a couple of key things. All right, the industry 4.0, how we ended up in 4.0, we started with machine production, that was 1.0, we started with mass production, the specialization, that was 2.0, then we brought IT into the arrangement of things, then it became 3.0, now is the world of cyber and physical systems. So there's a huge connection between people and machines, yeah? So that's where it's happening. So that's why your Gojek is a perfect example of how your motorbike can be traced, where it is, where your food is. Yeah, you can, everything is connected. You can speak. Now the latest technology of WhatsApp. So you are able to use WhatsApp for business, and instead of you finding out what is your revenue for the month through the SAP, you can type in your comment or put a voice message to your WhatsApp. The WhatsApp will connect to your SAP to using the API and tell you this was your revenue. This was the how. So I actually have a quick video. I'm not endorsing any product. I'm not an agent of any technology platforms, but just for you to illustrate what exactly your future would look like. Can you play that Oracle video? No, the other one.
Being a CFO in today's world means always being a step ahead. Oracle, run projections with acquisition bid range increased by 20%.
Hey Mom, can we go to the mountains this weekend? Maddie and Tara are going and they really want to meet up.
I've got an acquisition today and it might get complicated, so let's see how it goes. Oracle, show me revenue by product. Hey.
Meredith, the new board member Hannah says there's a competing bid.
I already reran the financials with the updated revenue data and higher bid numbers.
On it, as always.
Oracle, increase supply chain lead times by 1 week for the EMEA facilities. What does the new merger mean for our debt-to-equity ratio over the next 8 quarters?
Will be higher for the first 2 quarters following the merger, but will stabilize during the 3rd quarter.
How's it looking?
Pretty good. Quarterly bookings are above estimates.
Workforce impact?
Our intelligence performance management system is suggesting that we get 100 reps to get $300 million in sales.
What's the impact of the acquisition on finances with the new bid range?
What about additional supply chain costs?
Our increased production capacity will allow us to reach customers more quickly, more than making up for a 17% increase in cost.
And what about security and compliance standards, slowing down integration?
With our integrated cloud platform, integrations are streamlined and global compliance is always up to date.
The competing bid may increase the purchase price. Will the synergy still be sufficient to justify the price?
We've modeled several competing scenarios and are in a position of strength to increase our bid by 20% and still have the deal be accretive. I mean, this could be really big for us.
Well, I think it's time for a vote. All those in favor?
The competitive bid lead came in this morning. How does she do it?
It's Meredith. She's Superwoman.
Because when you're CFO, tomorrow starts today.
Yeah, you can skip that part. Yeah. Yeah. So, what was your observation when you were watching that video? The lady woke up. She's asking questions. She's not preparing data. She's asking questions. What about this? What's the revenue in this? What if? What if? What if? What about this scenario? Right? The board asked her that if the cost, if we do not reach our target revenue, what will happen? Then she said that we have modeled this many revenues, this many scenarios, and based on all the models, we are still able to achieve a maximum of this, right? So what will be your future CFO be like? He'll be the one who's asking questions, not preparing, right? He'll be the one who is part of this big strategy decision making, right? He is not the one who is busy behind the desk. He's on the front, you see? So while we like that, while we like talking about technology, and it's going to give you lots of opportunities for the finance professional, I must say one thing, and I really need your attention on this. You know, I go to a lot of companies and I train them for the latest standards, the latest IFRS, which is adopted in IPSAS, yeah? And my general observation is that many of this technology advancement is great, make things easy for us, but many of the people hide behind the systems. They, instead of, whenever I ask them, where did you get these figures from? Their general response is, I don't know, it's from the system. How did you imply this new standard? Well, I don't know, it's from the system. So it's always hiding behind the system. And this gives a very high risk of fraud. In fact, with this new technology development, the level of integrity and the level of monitoring of this so-called accountant must be very high, because he's at a very high pressure. Everything can be hidden behind the technology. So that's a different perspective of what has been shared with you. Technology is great, but let's also understand, if you do not know the basics of accountancy, if you hide that, oh, accountant is going to die in the next 5 years, the role of accountant is going to change, it is great, it's going to change. But let me remind you, the fundamentals of finance will remain. And that strength of you being your finance gatekeeper, the finance evolver, the finance strategist, in fact, has to be even bigger. It should not be only changing. It should be, you still be the best in what you do now, and then grow organically. Don't because of technology, because I want to remind you, technology is not an end by itself. Technology is a tool. Yeah, many of the board members of listed companies ask me, oh, we want to invest in this. We want to invest in this blockchain technology because of intercompany transactions are never being reconciled. Great. But what about why do you need this? Why are you generating so much of intercompany transaction? What is your business case? Have you asked those basic questions? Yeah, so I'm saying that technology is great, but you still need to make sure your fundamental finance is still strong, your technical competency is still going to be strong. So moving from that now, 4.0, I'll go on the key things. Yeah, you'll notice that in Industry 4.0, because learning becomes easier, we have a lot of opportunity to have more local products. Yeah, because it's now learning is not a difficult thing you have to go to a foreign country. Now learning has become an integrated solution. So you can study in Indonesia, you can study in other country, but you can also study through online. Online learning is going to be a huge thing. So you will have a lot of local opportunities here. I'm not going to go into this because you have already spoken greatly about this. Yeah. Now there are 6 hypotheses of finance future role, finance future trend. Number 1, organizations will be driven by real-time, customer-centric decision making. Yeah. So it's going to, a lot of data is going to be real-time. So what are you going to do with the data? All right. And then the data will be open, accessible to all. So you are not an owner of the data, you are a custodian of a data which will be shared. So do you dare to share your budgets? Do you dare to invite public accountability on the budgets that you have prepared? Yeah, I think even recently the PEMPROF DKI was challenged. Why don't you open up what was your APBD and what does it consist of? All right? Right, so it's open. Finance team will spend all their time generating insights. Right? What is your view? where does it lead us to? Yeah, so you are really on the front. All right, and then traditional roles will disappear because you will have new skills and new career paths will be needed. So you may have to develop entrepreneurial skills. Yeah, one of the key entrepreneurial skills that I want to pass on, since it's only 2 minutes, the ability to have a joining vision. Finance people always work in silos, departments, but most of my practical experience is that the finance people never get along with other departments. Yeah, there's always some conflicts going on. Yeah, because they are different departments. So if you are able to have a common vision, you sit down as part of an organization, become entrepreneurial. Let's drive our department to work together with the production, work together with the project side. Yeah, and then instead of having functional department, develop matrix organization. Yeah, and that becomes very fluid. You become a very fluid person instead of being very fixated on your function. So that you need to become an entrepreneur accountant. Yeah, and then the finance function will become virtual. The traditional CFO role will no longer exist. Will you trust an AI to do your job? Based on the research, they said the complex decisions will still be made by a human being. The repetitive task will be done by the system. But AI will give you the recommendations, but those recommendations, whether you want to absorb, the complex decisions will still be made by yourself. So you still need to be having that advice. That's why in ACCA, now all the questions are not calculate this, calculate this, calculate this. It's always advice, advice, advice. So you're asked to make advisory reports. Yeah, I'm beginning to get judgmental eyes now. Finish fast, yeah? Last, I'm going to end it there. My slide can be shared with you later. It consists of a lot of research from ACCA. But this is a slide which talks about skills. And if you could have a little bit attention on this slide, what is the number one skill that is needed as a finance person? The one is analysis and interpretation of data. It's on the top. And then communication. How well are you able to do interdepartment work? Yeah, vision, sharing the vision, right? Vision, data analytics, presentation, emotional intelligence. But I also want you to see that there is a new skills that are coming in, which are your coding. Have you ever considered around finance also learning some coding? Yeah, nowadays if our graduates graduate, we force them that you must learn Excel and you must also learn R programming, so that when you go to work, you are not busy scrolling up and down and trying to do filter. But you know how to put 2 little instructions and you get your data. That's how fast you can do if you use analytical language like Python or R. Yeah, so this is a new set of skills that needs to be, so sorry, time is up, but let me just scroll through all the slides. Experience, emotional, digital, creative, and vision. This was a part of the research done through interviewing and talking to 3,700 CFOs. So go to the ACCA website and see what is PQ all about, and see where do you stand at the PQ level. Yeah, so it's a great strategy. All right, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, thank you for the 4 keynote speakers. And now we come to the question and answer session. But first, I would like to invite Professor Ruhayatan to please come forward to the stage. And also, I would like to invite Professor Rahat Munir. Please come forward to the stage. I would like also invite Associate Professor Hardian Jayadikata. Please come forward to the stage. And Mr. Manish Gidwani, I would like to invite, please come forward to the stage. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have time 30 minutes for question and answer. And now, at first, I would like to open to 2 participants to ask the question to the panel and keynote speakers. Yeah. First, I would like you to introduce yourself, name and affiliations.
Thank you. My name is Agung. I'm from Ministry of Finance in the Directorate for Fiscal Balance. I'd like to have more comments from Professor Ruhaya and also Professor Hardian, and maybe also Professor Manish, because I'd like to have more discussion on the blockchains, and especially on also the cryptocurrency, because right now I think several months ago Facebook, for example, also announced that they are going to launch Libra and so on. I think in the future the role of money itself become less, and then supporting by blockchain technology, and then I think our discussion on the role of accountant and especially public accountant will be more decreased, and then will be shifting to another specialist jobs. And then what is your, I mean, could you more discuss on this implication of blockchains and cryptocurrency in the future? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Now I would like to Professor Ruhayatan or Associate Professor Adrian to answer the question. The question is about the blockchain and also the role of public accountant. Yes.
We are talking about blockchain, the strength of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Yeah? But in government sector, the government has to prepare the infrastructure, yeah? Because the blockchain is a very powerful technology, and it make things work faster. If I can share one of the things that the public sector, the government can do is, I took this an example in Malaysia where they say that the government is trying to do or to have better infrastructure for e-payment, where the citizens and the stakeholders are involved, how government paying the stakeholders or how the stakeholders paying the government. E-payment is very important. You need to facilitate this. And officially, Malaysian government has not really recognized cryptocurrency yet, but this is an avenue for better e-payment system, where people don't need to see the flat cash, the fiat money to pay. Yeah, and I think because of the blockchain technology, I am not so well versed in this technology, but in a simple terms, what Professor Hendren asking earlier, do you know what's blockchain all about? Yeah, it's every transaction that you make is like encrypted, yeah? And you cannot change it, and you can check what's going on, and nobody can cheat. Yeah, so maybe this is a way to avoid leakages, yeah, to avoid corruption, isn't it, Prof? Yeah? In public sector, you're talking about corruption, but if you do transactions using this blockchain technology, this kind of issues can be tackled. I think that much I can say for now. Yeah?
All right. I think this is a very important and interesting question. To me, using blockchain, we're still learning about blockchain, all right? We don't know exactly what this technology is, but a lot of banks, financial institutions, they are using blockchain technology. So the crux of this technology is it will become cost effective, more efficient and effective services. How this is going to happen, because blockchain would remove all middlemen from there, all right? So they will be directly dealing with the supplier, vendor, and so on, all right? Even if you're buying a house, it said the cost of the house will reduce by 1 to 2% because you will remove agent from there, from between, or solicitors and so on. So that is going to be the benefit of using blockchain. Public sector is all about services, all right? We don't produce, but we serve community, we serve people, and as a result of that, what happened is blockchain would benefit public sector to offer more cost-effective services in the future.
Thank you. I agree with the two answers before from Professor Ruhaya and Professor Rahat. The thing is, blockchains can be seen or should be seen as again another tool, right? It's actually just ledger, encrypted, etc., etc. Reduce obviously potential cheats, right? Because everything is trackable. And it actually don't lead to the ideas of the new currency, which is called cryptocurrency, right? You mentioned about Libra, for example. The issue is that no one can avoid them. Right. At the moment, we're still learning, as Professor Rahat mentioned. They are still developing, especially in terms of the rules and governance surrounding them. And we talk about cryptocurrencies, for example, right? There are still a lot of things that need to be done in terms of, again, the governance of it. So is it a real currency? Is it really actually can be accepted as currency or not? At the moment, it's not currency, but it's actually can be used now for transaction, for economic transaction. So how this actually being regulated, how this is actually being monitored is still ongoing process. So, but at the end of the day, it will reach public sectors, right? So when we talk about accountants in private sectors, they have actually done and deal with this actually probably earlier. As usual, they're actually reacted or even more proactive, right, in dealing with this kind of changes. Public sectors need to keep up with the game of this change and actually also react and be more proactive. But I think it's probably too early to say in terms of what the effect of this cryptocurrency in the future, right? But again, I haven't seen really actually efforts made significantly in terms of rules and regulations, and if the legal aspect cannot be actually sorted out, obviously there are always risks in terms of the acceptance and also risk of the use of cryptocurrencies. So at the end of the day, again, right, blockchains on the other hand can actually go beyond obviously cryptocurrencies, and that's actually something that is useful, right, as long as you actually really actually set the boundaries. When you actually do the coding, for example, that coding is very important in blockchains, right? So because that actually can be manipulated as well. The system, or if you like, the structure is good, but the process is actually developing good coding, etc., etc. It's also important, and that's why, as Professor Rahat mentioned, we're still learning about it. But it's actually something that we cannot really avoid, right? They come and they will stay. They have come and they will actually continue to stay.
All right, on the issue of blockchain, the simplest example for blockchain is when you use Google Sheets. Have you used Google Sheets before? Where you have shared data, it's live sharing. So likewise, you have distributed ledgers, right? Instead of you working on one ledger and then another person in charge of another ledger, and therefore you need to do reconciliation. There's a lot of paperwork. But using blockchain, there is no need for reconciliation anymore because it's live sharing of these small blocks of information, right? So that helps a lot in the area of audit. Why I know? Because in my audit practice now we are using IBM's version of the blockchain, where we help companies to solve this intercompany reconciliation, which creates lots of difficult situations. Yeah, so that is one issue regarding the reconciliation. So it will help you to be very efficient in terms of record keeping, because now the role of the accountant can focus on the judgment part. Now you don't have to worry about reconciliation. Yeah, a lot of paperwork can be reduced. The other part is about the ownership. In Indonesia, you can have one person owning a land and then that another person also claiming ownership on the same land. So satu tanah have banyak owner. Yes. So if you have blockchain that records the history of ownership, then it will confirm that this is a valid asset owned by this. The history cannot be intercepted because the security level in when you issue some smart contracts and attach it to ownership of assets, it becomes, you cannot break that system. So in terms of ownership of assets, it will be very useful. In terms of, you know, when we used to do that, this is the receivable, and then we want to confirm receivable, we send letter. Now actually using blockchain, you don't need to do that. Karena if the debtor is already using smart contract that this is a receivable, we don't have to do that confirmation anymore. So it will have a lot of impact on the accounting side, on the audit side. But like what Professor said, that there's a lot more to learn in terms of the usage. So it is really not the crypto side of things. What they did is spoil the name of blockchain by using it for crypto and not having an underlying asset, because all they did was issue smart contracts and have value on that smart contracts with no underlying asset, you know, and that's why Bitcoins were the first product of blockchain. But blockchain itself being used in finance has a great usage. So I would really encourage the team here to start learning on what can be used, what will be the use, and what will be the efficiencies and cost cutting that can happen by use of the blockchain. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for Professor to answer the question. Now we come to the second question, please. Yep.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. My name is Bambang Stiono. I'm from Sampurna University. I graduate from this school, from STAN. My observation and my questions. I think this is one for public accountability. What is the experience of Australia in terms of applying accrual accounting, new public management in the public sector? Is that making accountability improve? Is making people can apply accountability, like your definition of accountability, responsible with whatever you did, for example, for the government officers. So in Australia, I think if you look the picture of the corruption, it's always yellow, right? Never red. When you are applying the new public management, accrual accounting, a lot of the modern accounting in the private sector into the public sector, I think it's still yellow. When you applying that, it's not red before. In developing country, it's already red, and assuming we become yellow, maybe. What do you think about that? I mean, what's your lesson learned from Australia when you're applying that? And that's for public accountability. Yeah? Now for the Industrial Revolution 4.0. You know, in my university, I also teach one class from Oregon University. We are collaborating with Oregon University. The class that I taught is about ethics for robotics. You know, in the US, they already think about developing robot for fighting. So, you know, for attacking enemy, you can imagine that. And then they're thinking, well, if robot can do that, can we apply ethics to that? Applying ethics to the robot. So my question is, I don't think they will difficult to develop auditor robot, accounting robot, right? I mean, they will have, like the Ministry of Education of Indonesia said, what important is understanding coding, language, and content is not so important. So the content can be put into the system. Accounting is the technical is the content. So do you think accounting academic or school have to prepare for this, to prepare for developing auditor robot and accounting robot? You know, otherwise we are maybe developing wrong curriculum or wrong something for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Norman, for the question. Now, I think Professor Rahat will answer.
There are so many questions within a question, actually. Maybe I'll take your first question first, and second question I'll leave it to my other colleagues here. In Australia, public sector is not taken as a public sector per se, all right? Remember that. And there's a slogan called as commercial-like. Okay, commercial-like means like the private sector. So there's no public sector mentality, the people do the work. So, you know, in a public sector, often we say your job is confirmed for, even if you don't work, you don't perform, and so on. This is often which is called as in the public sector. In Australia, it is not. If you're performing, you're gone home. That's it. All right, like a private sector. There's no job surety and things like you would stay in that company for or in that sector for forever. All right. So what happens is in early 80s there were public sector reforms in Australia, and from there they try to make public sector more efficient, and then a lot of rules, regulations, procedures, and then making these public sector more commercial-like, all right, or private sector-like organizations. So in answering to your question, yes, there is an improvement. And due to rules and regulation, corruption in Australia is very little, all right? Because people are law-abiding, and why they are law-abiding? Because there's a writ of law, all right? If you break a signal, if you're driving, then they know that you'll be caught, and you can't bribe, okay, to a policeman. And then if you do, then there is another charge on you, all right? So you end up paying more, so you're in more trouble if you do that. So the corruption in the public sector is less as compared to many public sector in other countries, especially developing countries. Second is often the public sector is taken as more bureaucratic, all right? The red tapeisms and different levels, approvals, and then decision-making process is slow, all right? Another thing which public sector in Australia they have done is, especially in the local council, is remove those, hurdles, levels, and organizations have become flatter now, especially the local councils, because that is the main public sector. Other one is audit department or accounts department. They are the main public sector organization. Like the university for which I work, in Australia, there is just one private sector university, that's it. All other are public sector. But they are self-regulated, they have their own rules, regulations, they create their own funds. But by title, they are public sector universities. So we are as effective as efficient as any private sector university, all right? So in answering your question, yes, there is a positive impact of reforms on the public sector in Australia, all right?
Oh, second question. Okay, so this is about ethics, if not mistaken. So there was a story already behind that, right? Quite long story. So ethics, there's an example. I think if you look at, you mentioned about robots being used as a weapon, for example, right? It has been used now. Drone is basically used just recently, for example, as a weapon. That's actually really sensitive issue. But if we actually go even more local to autonomous vehicle, for example, if you basically, you probably have read Google's, right, and others actually develop autonomous vehicles without drivers. And when accidents happen, and it did happen, whose responsibility is that? So from the legal point of view, actually I got a research actually focusing on this one. We actually need to basically ensure that actually cover not only in terms of ethics, but also in terms of legal consequences. So it's actually in the developing stage as well. So a lot of changes going on, right? I mentioned, one of my slides mentions about norms, rules, regulations. And that's the thing that need to be actually equipped in every every change or every situation that actually involves change, including this automation. So everyone's learning at the moment, right? It's like actually a game of who actually catch who, right? So in terms of whether we should actually develop auditor robots, if not mistaken, you mentioned auditor robots that actually did or do or does auditing. Well, it has been done, actually. The automation in terms of some part of auditing has been done anyway. So the decision making still should be done, in my opinion, right, by human being, because judgment is actually involved there. But the process of auditing itself obviously can be automated. Right? Where is the ethics in that? If the system is right in terms of applying all the auditing rules and regulations, so nothing wrong with that. As long as, again, the judgment, the opinion that actually made, still actually made by human, or at least checked by human, right? And I think there's no problem with that. My concern is actually share with you is more in terms of the tools that actually made through automations, like robots being used as weapons, autonomous vehicle, that kind of things. That's actually more complicated. In auditing, honestly speaking, I don't see any much issue on that one.
I'll pass to Mani first, because you're saying about we don't need the substance.
All right, that's an interesting question on the second part. Whether should we develop accountant robots or audit robots, I'll give you a quick scenario here. A couple of days ago, the client that I was auditing, he in Indonesia, when you pay interest to a foreign lender, you're supposed to pay tax, 20% tax deduction, yeah? PPH 26, yeah? So you know all that, right? Yeah. And then, so this guy said to me that, this transaction, why don't we just don't record it in the first place? Let's not record this transaction. Because if you record it, I'm going to be paying $1 million of tax. And now in that kind of situation, what they can do to the robot is just omit the transaction, right? Because the robot's control is going to be in the client's hand, right? The auditor also, if the boss who owns the robot, right, can be programmed to say, okay, omit this transaction, then you're done. So I do not think that ethics can be taken over by robots, because there is this element of judgment that and this element of integrity that only human beings can exercise. There's always this question that, when you do that internal control framework, which one is important? Segregation of duty or personnel control? I remember I was asked this question when I was being interviewed a long time ago in my application to